This is Matt Sullivan. In 2007, Matt was a freelancer just building WordPress websites. Now, he never wanted to build an agency, but clients kept asking him for more. And so he gave in and finally made his first hire. Today, he's a CEO of Torro Media. It's a full-service creative agency that has 10 different services, and he's even got a partnership with HubSpot and Google. So today we're gonna talk about how Matt accidentally built his agency, why saying yes to more sales almost sank his business, how he hires A players at every level. And if you stay to the end, you're gonna get access to his free tool that pulled in millions of monthly views and even grew him an email list of 40,000 people. So here's Matt Sullivan, founder and CEO of Torro Media. So Matt, you started solo in 2018. Freelancing and helping people with their websites. You had this oh shit moment where you thought, hey, you can't do it on your own anymore. Tell me about that oh shit moment.
Yeah, no, it's very real. And I think anyone that's like a true entrepreneur, they kind of like want to take on everything and they feel the necessity to do things themselves and say yes to everything. So yeah, 2018 was this moment where I pivoted away from a previous agency that I built up for 4.5 years. I went out on my own and I was like, I'm never going to do this agency thing again. But referral after referral, kind of compounding efforts with delivering good stuff to good people, it kind of led to like this oh shit moment. Like, I can't do this myself. So it was definitely, there was a moment there in 2018 that I was like, I need help. Yeah, I was the bottleneck in my business of just like, to scale and to make this work and actually be able to like deliver to people. I was like, I gotta grow. I gotta find help. So that is, I've always tried to be the Swiss Army knife of like knowing how to do everything. But I know in 2018, it was really pivoting away from like how to do stuff to like who can do this stuff. And that was really important for me to kind of like think about it differently.
And who were the first hires? Like what was the first things you did?
Well, I didn't necessarily start by like hiring people, full-time 9 to 5 under our, umbrella as the business. It was something that started as someone that was a freelancer or a subcontractor or things like that, where I was trying to piece it together, but still keep it me. I didn't necessarily want to take this leap into, hiring people full-time and then doing benefits and doing all this stuff. And it just like seemed like a daunting thing that I just wasn't willing to do for a little bit. But it just got to a point where I was like, I'm going to hinder everything. Like the brand, I'm going to hinder my clients. If I can't make this giant leap into real agency world and hiring appropriately, it's just going to fall apart. So I had to find initially people to just help manage projects. We did look for more generalists to start of like who can also be a Swiss Army knife and do a bunch of good things. But that wasn't necessarily the right way to do it. It was just how I initially started. But I think the main piece that I was missing from day one was someone that knew operations, someone that knew like processes, someone that knew how to kind of fix things at the source, then like rather than just fix the problem that day, which was always my thing. Whatever the squeaky wheel was, I would pay attention to that versus go back and fix the original problem.
And why? So you said, okay, you hired generalists and you said, hey, that wasn't the right move. Like if you could go back and coach yourself, what went wrong and what would you do differently?
So we had a few pivots at the time. And one thing that like I built my first WordPress website in 2007 and I was kind of always known for like building websites. And for reference, I think WordPress started in like 2004. So I'm kind of dating myself quite a bit, but web design was always the core of like, hey, you have a terrible website. Let's fix it up, launch something new that's sexy and has better user experience. So did that for a while, but realized that we were just hunting for kind of the next website and the next website, really bad for cash flow and just a very unpredictable business. So when the sites would go live, we started, how can we market to them? How can we drive new traffic, paid, organic, et cetera? So we offered a bunch of new things that were recurring revenue, retainer-based services. And with that, had to find the people that could really drive and spearhead those initiatives in certain departments. And initially, it was that generalist of like, hey, I can do it all. Like, you want email marketing? You got it. You want some social media content? Sure, I'll schedule it and post it on Buffer. Like, it was all that stuff. But that was just the recipe for disaster because it wasn't truly scalable. You were kind of, again, taking like a one-off thing and customizing it and shaping it to just that person in that moment or that business. But it wasn't something that was like easily repeatable because we were, again, just like taking it one for one, diagnosing it, saying yes to everything, and trying to please each person individually. So we really had to kind of like, what are we like really good at, and how can we just get kick-ass at those things to where we can repeat this across other industries, other clients easier.
Do you think the part that wasn't scalable, because there's the business model and then there's the talent, would you have changed the business model but still hired generalists, or would you have changed the business model and hired specialists? Like what happened?
Probably both, which at the time it's extremely intimidating because like small business, you're scaling and every dollar matters. So it is something that if funds were unlimited, like I think I would absolutely dial both back to hire specialists per department and several. So we're not just relying on the one person to do the one thing for that area. But people don't always have that luxury. Like that's expensive. It's really hard. And, you want to get A players. And, if you kind of just get generalists, then you're kind of getting this generalized result to the client too. If you hire specialists that really do incredible work, you can charge more, you can charge a premium, you can kind of deliver more results that lead to more referrals and better testimonials, et cetera. So it is something that if we could probably go back to 2018, restart some of those things, we would kind of look more at that who, not how model, where I'm not trying to do everything myself, and then more specialist over generalist.
Yeah. And do you think did you think you needed because you were doing a lot of different things, right? You were doing web design, SEO, paid. In that case, would you have a generalist doing a bit of everything to figure out the model, and then once it's nailed, then get specialists? Or would you have specialists in from day one, standardize as much as possible before expanding?
Well, it's really hard, I think, in a lot of these industries that are constantly moving. Like even if you even try to talk about like SEO last year versus SEO this year, it's night and day. It's just not even close. You can't even compare the things. Like in the marketing world, like the goalpost is constantly changing and moving. But yeah, I do think that hiring, specialists that can kind of like really tailor into certain things that deliver, it's great. It's unnatural for me to think that way because I was kind of like always a trial and error type guy where I'd say yes to something, go figure it out, tinker with it, and then, deliver based off what I just learned. And that's just a terrible model, but it is something that people, when they first get started, they tend to be yes people, say yes to everything, learn and go. But yeah, I always tried to, even when I was kind of in those moments, really do a lot of the trial and error with our own brand first to kind of prove something before trying to sell it to anyone, before trying to offer it. So we were always the guinea pig that would try something to see if it would work. And then we have something that is a little bit more predictable to then go with confidence versus just blindly trying different things.
Yeah. Do you have a cool example?
There was a lot of stuff with social media that we're constantly preaching it. So this was one, like when we looked at stuff to pivot away from websites, how can we do marketing service ongoing? And there's such a gap in the market of how to do good social media. At the time, people would post like a very tacky one image something just to check a box. It'd be like Happy Thanksgiving and a picture of a turkey. And you're like, that's not good social media. That's just creating more noise that no one cares about. So we were trying to kind of coach people up of like, yeah, you checked a box that day, but that's not necessarily the right way to do it. So we, with our own accounts, started creating different types of content that was educational, which we would try to do short form content in under 20 seconds, but offer something that's someone can go do on their own really quickly. We would grab onto trends and try different things, but we were like, we're going to prove that these strategies work, show it to our clients to then instill trust that they'll go try something different and be willing to experiment. So like we had a few things go, 5 million views on Instagram or like millions and millions of views across different channels. And then that was kind of proof that we're like, we know what we're talking about. Like, let's try something different. And we had a lot of people that originally were like, we're just not the creative type. But then all of a sudden they were like, let's give it a go. So we definitely we tried a bunch of things that sound insane that they kind of worked out, and then people tend to listen to us a little bit more on the coaching side.
Yeah, I mean, we're here today because I saw your social media experience, right? So like it works.
It does work.
It does work.
It is one of those things though, like when you're looking at the different parts of like social media and the different like area of the funnel, it's like it's really easy. Like all of our top views are this like top of the funnel, high awareness play. It may not have anything to do with our website or our business, but it is something that will get the eyeballs to then maybe show them the next thing that could take them through, our services and our offerings and stuff at the bottom of the funnel that's transactional. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of, you saw a website in a short form piece of content on LinkedIn. Now we're here on a podcast. So it does work. But some people early on were not open to it, which that was social media back in 2018, 2019.
So different now. So if you're, so let's say you're launching the social media experiment, right? You're experimenting in-house so that you can go launch it for clients. Do you have stages of hiring? Because I imagine you're not going to hire a specialist on day one. I imagine that you're going to like maybe test it yourself, test it in-house, test it with folks you have who may be more generalists before you hire a specialist full time. And then I know you have a blend of, you can have a generalist with AI, you can have a generalist offshore, you can have a specialist onshore. Like, what does that blend look like with new business models?
So, a really good question. It's something that I look for different signals of creativity that they've had prior to getting to us. I don't want to necessarily give them a playbook and step one, two, three, and just have them follow step one, two, three. I'd rather than get that piece of paper and that resume, I'd rather people show me proof. Like, show me that you went and started a new Instagram account dedicated to like mac and cheese reviews, which is actually, that's a real story. That's someone that we hired here that was doing mac and cheese reviews. And I was like,
No
this
way.
is someone that 100% has our DNA and is willing to test and create and do something cool. We've had people been like, check out this website that I built. I don't even know anything about building websites, but I built this website on my own using whatever tools, and here's what I learned. So, I want proof ahead of time because people don't need permission for that. Like, you don't need to be
Yeah.
hired to go do the thing. You can just go create something. So a lot of the early talent and the kids coming out of school and things like that, we would look for just creativity signals of things that they've done due to curiosity. And that's maybe the biggest thing that I look for is like professional curiosity. Is like they wanted to know how something worked. They wanted to know how to make something go, and they went and tinkered with it and did trial and error. And those are the things that if you find people with that, you can absolutely introduce them into a successful agency and a lot of the cool things that we do because they're always curious and they're always looking to problem solve around that, which is great.
So let's use this example. So guy does mac and cheese reviews on social media, right? Now I imagine there's a value arbitrage there because if you were to hire someone who's an expert in social media, building B2B social media brands, etc., that's going to be a way pricier hire than someone who does mac and cheese reviews and you can train them on your way. Is
Sure.
that something you consider?
Yes. And it's funny because, like, going to do the whole Alex Ramosi workshop, and they're always like promoting the, just pay for the A player and all that. And it's worth, ripping that band-aid off early on, which I do believe, but I think there's a huge benefit to kind of coming up through that trial and error experimenting and kind of learning through that. Because I think that's like how we were built. Like the foundation that I was built on was
Yeah.
that side of it of really knowing how something's built. And I know like a lot of people would throw away the instruction manuals and just kind of tinker with something to make it to truly understand it versus there's some people that need to go step one, two, three, four. And in a creative agency, like we really look for a little bit of both, but I'd rather take that person that's done a lot of experience in experimental stuff because of how fast things are changing right now. They really need to know and be willing to kind of try the new thing and learn from that fast versus the old way of doing it.
Yeah. Like, so using that Alex Ramosi framework, he has a barbell approach where he's got
Mm.
either people who are just awesome, high energy, awesome learners, or people who are super experienced and they're not here to learn, they're here to build, right? And that barbell is like in the learning stage, you teach them your ways. In the build stage, that's the A player leader. You're paying way more for that type of person, etc. And there's a place for everyone at different tiers
Right.
throughout the agency. You need doers, you need managers, you need leaders. Do you have a different hiring system for each tier of talent and how they kind of play against across your service lines?
Well, now, yeah, and early on, very messy,
Yeah,
very
I
messy early
imagine.
on, but it was something that, we were missing that operational piece early on, right? And we hired just super talented, wonderful person, Michelle. She's our COO. And that was one person that could dial it back to the original source of where a problem came from, fix it at that level to where we don't have to kind of handle these little fires one by one. But let's go back to like where did the original spark of these fires come from? Go back and fix the process and be more efficient. So it was something that we could have kind of probably kept hiring these like individual generalists kind of fixing little fires. But that move from an operational standpoint allowed us to put some band-aids on early on that the efficiencies in each department would be so much stronger. The relationships with the clients would be 10 times tighter. Communications would just be crystal clear because we have better processes, a lot of automation
Yeah.
built in, things like that that we really didn't consider early on. But it sounds obvious now.
Yeah. Um, so what was the evolution then of your hiring? Like if you put it in a few stages, 'cause it sounds like you went specialist to start. I'm sorry, you went generalist to start, said, no, enough of that, I need specialists. But it sounds like marketing specialists, and then kind of expanded to adding operations folks. Like what was the stages of progression?
So, in being that bottleneck and being just run down, overwhelmed with work and going way beyond a 9 to 5, right? You're working late into the night. And I almost had like two shifts early on where there was this like, 9 to 5 ish traditional hours. And then it was like go eat dinner. And then there was this like second shift of like after dinner between like whatever, 8 p.m. to like 2 a.m. So there was a lot of stuff early on where I was like, I need help. That you got to free up time there. So I think the original generalist hires, the original kind of like PM type hires too, that was stuff that it needed to free up my time to then be able to like do things with the business versus just deliver the services people hired us for. But yeah, it kind of went generalist to kind of like clear up my plate a little bit to help deliver the services people actually hired us for. Then from an operational standpoint, in like super high level like manager type role, to actually help conduct more efficient ways of doing things that I just couldn't see. And I like that's something that every entrepreneur is probably pretty blind to. An entrepreneur thinks they're good at everything. But if you're really honest with yourself, you're like, what are the things that I suck at? And there's some things that you find those blind spots. And if you can find someone that can really help identify the pain points, the blind spots, things like that, it's incredible what it can do to the business. So I was very lucky early on to, find some very talented people to help us with operations before, again, jumping back into hiring for more specialists in departments because of the better efficiencies.
Hmm. Um, so it sounds like, so I heard three stages. Like, hey, let's get rid of Matt's second shift because you're a generalist hire.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah. And then stage two was make your business more efficient operationally, that kind of stuff. And then three was almost bringing the specialists in. At that point, you're then hyper, and I imagine these are marketing specialists who are like hyper optimizing delivery. Is that what the three stages look like?
That's correct. And yeah, and then as far as like a timeline goes, that like whole 2 a.m. shift and those like late ones, that was way earlier on. So like, I was doing, some freelance stuff back in like, 2010, 2011, stuff like that, and there'd be late nights there. So I don't want to make it seem like the infancies of Torro was necessarily that late stuff. But either way, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you can't really turn the stuff off. It's always there. There's always a new notification that is in itself a challenge. But no, you hit the nail on the head as far as like what that timeline looked like, and then finding really good specialists and constantly addressing back that who not how mentality of who can do this better than me versus how can I go do this myself.
Yeah. And how are these folks structured? Because I imagine you still have these folks, the PMs, the generalists, operational folks, and specialists. But then you also have four service lines: web design, SEO, paid, and social. What is it? What does your structure look like? How do those people kind of filter through the business?
So we do have kind of a director of each area of the business, right? Those are four main pillars, four main departments, pods, if you will, those, and they kind of feed off one another. So we still have the web design development side of the house, maintaining websites, etc. The other side, the other three, from PPC, paid ads, to organic SEO, to social with like SOC, strategic organic content, those other three, they kind of feed back and forth. So the web work, when you're done with your website, you go to the marketing channels there. And then through the marketing channels, you know what? You could really use a better site, a better foundation, et cetera. It's going to feed that other side of the house. But from a talent standpoint, there's a director running each of those four, and there's specialists underneath those that they really tend to they work really well, of course, in their department, but they offer a ton of value to one another. So there's people that, like, if they find a really good keyword or phrase or some strategy organically, they're going to share that with the paid department of, hey, we're seeing this thing really take off. Or we create this really cool short form content on social. You know what? This would actually be really great for a paid ad. So although we have great talent in these departments, that they really stay in their lane, but at the same time, anything that they find working, we share it with one another. So we're always kind of educating one another on what's working per department.
Got it. And so you have the four departments, you have a director over each department, and then do you have so it's not do you have like how is the actual there's the client relationship, there's a strategy, and there's actual work getting done. For the client relationship, is that the director?
Um, Early on, so in like a discovery kind of onboarding phase, they're definitely part of helping architect out like what the campaign should be, what we should try to track for KPIs, things like that. So they'll help outline that, which is obviously super important to measure, is this successful or not? You got to have some sort of
Yeah.
target.
Yeah.
But when it comes to execution, we give everyone here the total freedom to create incredible relationships with our partners. That people who have certain accounts on their plate, they do communicate every single day with them, whether it's the owner of a business that just needs a marketing team, or we're actually, have relationships with a full marketing department at a larger organization or enterprise level that will lean on us to help with execution. But all of these, strategic, these digital strategists, they have these one-on-one relationships with our clients and partners, and we communicate through monday.com for all the management.
Oh, that's cool. And so so you're talking about execution, each of the executionists, let's call it, have a relationship directly with the client. And so it's not like you have a account manager that kind of manages the relationship. It's the actual people doing the work.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, no one's going to know the account better than the people doing the work and in the actual weeds. But that being said, like, there's a lot of these, biweekly or monthly recaps that I'll sit in on, or, someone else on our team will be a part of from a director level to, help get a second set of eyes on things. So although the day to day is managed at that account level, and the person who's actually executing,
Yeah, that's a
it
big
is
word.
something that we we do want to have people that can actually offer other insights on top of that. So
Yeah, I got it. So there's like the day-to-day execution conversation and then the strategic high-level conversation. And those are two different tiers, basically. Got it, got it, got it. And how do you actually, for the execution itself, what's the balance of like how the work gets done? Like now with like AI tools versus offshoring versus onshoring, like what's the split on how the work gets done?
yeah, it's been so experimental in that world too. But it's stuff that it's funny because early on people were like, "Man, Google hates AI content," and it was like, "Well, let's put that to the test." Ran a ton of experiments of producing tons of AI content, and we are like, you know what? Google doesn't care as long as it's helpful. So, we will definitely leverage AI for a lot of things that the human just can't do at scale. So, analyzing massive sitemaps, analyzing huge amounts of data to help guide campaigns, to help guide new content and create structure. Super, super important. But there's a lot of stuff that the human touch is 100% necessary to kind of get things really optimized and working. Like you can get AI content found, but when you add the human element to it, the personal experiences, and kind of the EAT of experience, authoritativeness, trustworthiness that Google deems very important for organic, it's that stuff that makes the difference. So you can't just throw out AI fluff. If you use the real experiences, and the authorship of who it's coming from, all that's taken into consideration. So like we don't necessarily do anything that's like anonymous. Like if it's for a client and the business owner has like 30 years of experience in HVAC or plumbing or something like that, it's like I want his point of view woven into the things that we know Google wants to see. And it's really an art to kind of do that. So we can structure it really well with AI, but at the end of the day, I need that person to kind of offer their insights too. So that has helped. We have pivoted around that and getting more of the real human touch into content these days.
Hmm. And what are examples of human touch versus AI?
So it's something that we've kind of created a new service based around this because we saw AI, LLMs, ChatGPT, all these people having higher levels of citation based off of different social channels. They love YouTube, they love seeing content on Reddit. There's certain things that if you can produce content there and produce it on, say, your website and have this kind of linking between the two, you have a phenomenal chance of being recommended and the trust levels go through the roof. So something that we try to do is anytime we're producing new content on a website is I need video to go with this. I don't care if we jump on like a Zoom call with someone. I don't care if I show up at your office and film you, but I'm going to come to you. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to get your answers and I want to weave that video asset into the content that is written form and not just leave it on the website, but repurpose it across other channels. It gives us the greatest reach, the greatest opportunity to show trust and credibility. So that video element and getting the real stuff, not the faceless AI BS. It's like I want the real stuff, and people crave that. The more like AI junk they see, people crave more of that human element. So it's become a necessity in a lot of the content that we build these days.
Yeah. And also like human opinions, like what things people are actually doing and actually experiencing. If you can put that in content, I think people like that a lot more.
100%. Like the author
Yeah.
boxes that I put around my content shows that I've been doing this stuff since 2007. And so they're not gonna, like Google is not going to weigh an anonymous post the same as if I say it with all of that experience since 2007. So it's like if people have the experience, it's a phenomenal opportunity to showcase that and share things that they've learned and, offer a lot of those recommendations or real life scenarios.
Yeah. That makes sense. And so as you're deciding kind of who's creating the content, how you're making these teams, how do you know when you need to add or remove people from teams? Like how do you check capacity?
Yeah, it's something that, I mentioned earlier, like knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at. It's still something I'm working on. And luckily, we have a really good leadership team here to kind of help weigh in on this. But it is something that there's certain level of like forecasting when an opportunity comes to us. We get a new lead, things like that. It doesn't close that day. There's going to be a lot of back and forth and kind of assessing what they need, the types of campaigns that are going to lead to success. That we have a really good kind of pipeline of opportunity, especially when you get to like medium to large size businesses. They don't move super fast, but
Hmm.
we can be very predictable in understanding the amount of work in our pipeline that could come to fruition and forecasting, what is likely to close and start to see that coming and understand the bandwidth of those specialists these days. That if people are like at capacity, they're really maxed out on the work that they have to do day to day. And then we have all this stuff coming in the pipeline. And I see that in the next 2 to 3 months, it's going to potentially close. Man, huge red flag. Like we got to make sure that we put people in the right situations. And it's not like you can hire and just someone knows exactly how we do things here. So you do have to
Right.
kind of have a little buffer on either side to see something coming, forecast it appropriately, and then teach people our systems to then be able to accommodate that. So it's very tricky, but it's something that we're getting better and better at that.
How do you know what someone's bandwidth is? Like, how do you know when they're maxed out?
Well, we're doing a lot more one-on-ones to kind of understand this. Because that's something that I think a lot of people here are very similar to how I was, where we're just yes people, we're people pleasers. We like to like make it seem like we can do everything. But when we actually kind of sit down and we're like, it seems like you may be overwhelmed. Is this true? Like, yeah, I'm kind of worried about the next day because I didn't finish the thing I had to do today. It's like if there's ever signals of that or someone feeling these pressures or anxiety around their work, that is a massive red flag, but you can't do your best work if you feel that way. So like in a creative space, in a creative agency, like you do your best stuff when you have kind of the ability and bandwidth to actually explore and test and do new things. So that is something that we've gotten better through Monday.com to kind of like time track, prep out to-do lists, see what work we have on a monthly basis through our retainers, and have a better understanding of who may be hitting that ceiling. Because it's tough, and it's not easy to find, people that can do some of these things. I
Yeah.
we like to hire in-house, and I get probably 10 phone calls a day about outsourced white label solutions that I don't want to do. So it is a tricky process, but we try to forecast it the best we can.
Yeah. And okay. And so it sounds like it's more qualitative than quantitative, but you're starting to do some time tracking in Monday. Is that is that kind of how you figure out where they need folks?
Yeah, like I mentioned, Michelle in operations, and she found like a lot of these inefficiencies in our overall processes, but constantly working with specialists of like how they do things, analyzing their individual project boards to find better ways to kind of manage workloads and then get a better understanding of what that bandwidth could be. So, I mean, we call her Miss Monday because she like does all these incredible automations and things in Monday.com.
Yeah.
That's really helped us kind of get a better 30,000 foot overview of like who's doing what bandwidth they may have. A new client signs, who could potentially take it on in a department. But then again, if someone's maxed out and a department is in heavy demand, we may need to hire in that area.
Yeah. And how does that work in terms of, so you said there's onboarding, and so you probably need a few months runway or like 2 months runway, let's say, before they're needed, uh, when you have to start hiring. What does that look like? Like, what does your onboarding flow look like? How do you predict that far in advance when you need someone?
Well, we kind of look at it in a couple different ways of like, we have some work here on the verge of closing, or we anticipate closing X percentage of what's in the pipeline. So we see these opportunities coming. But similar to how like we're always kind of our own test model and like we treat ourselves like the guinea pig to kind of like try things out, is we'll hire someone on. There'll be, a couple weeks of understanding how we use things, what tools we use, because in our world, there's a million tools. And then there's a lot of different preferences around AI. So we kind of show our special sauce and stuff in the matter of a couple weeks. But then we like to get people started with our own stuff. Like, how can you work on things within Torro, our own content, to kind of learn from that before you're introduced to different clients. But there's definitely like a shadowing program there too, of like, I want you to sit on a bunch of these calls with us, really hear people as far as their problems, and start to do that problem solving of why we hired you in the first place. And we know that you're super talented in problem solving. So we want you to kind of shadow these things and learn from it and then apply it. But it is kind of a staggered approach too, of giving them ownership of accounts and slowly adding more and more accounts onto their plate.
Yeah. Got it. Got it. And so it sounds like Miss Monday's kind of cleaning stuff up on the upside.
Always.
Always.
Always upset with me too of not doing things the right way. So just, yeah, constantly fixing my stuff, which is great.
I feel that. I feel that. Okay. And so what's your guys' biggest focus now? Because it sounds like you're at a stage where systems are coming together, but Miss Monday is helping kind of upgrade those systems. What's the focus now and for the next kind of 12 months?
The next 12 months, we really want to go back and kind of have this like deeper versus wider mentality with our existing roster of clients. So we're getting tons of referrals. We have a really good AI visibility score that we get. Like, here's an example. So we had a prospect reach out to us yesterday. They downloaded all of their marketing statistics. They downloaded all of their, different data points, all this stuff, and uploaded it all into an LLM. It was in ChatGPT, and they said, like, here's all of our problems. We need help with all this stuff. Who should we hire for this? And it recommended us, which was
No
such a
way.
cool, like, it was a phenomenal win, and just a really, it's just great that we paved kind of enough of and created enough of a foundation to really get that trust from an LLM and recommended when people dump all their problems and things into ChatGPT. So we had a great conversation with someone yesterday, and the trust was already there because they kind of like they believe the AI recommendation over their own research of traditional, like how to go about finding someone that could help with something. So we have a lot of referrals flowing in. Now we're trying to find the best fit of like who to work with, but we don't want to just say yes to everything like we used to. And that was like such a massive problem of we used to always say that. Just yes, yes to everything, bring on as much as you can, right? More people and more partners and more clients equals more money. But that was really bad formula too. So now we're trying to be extremely strategic, making sure that everything is a good fit. We can truly show value and return to anyone that we bring on. So it's really well vetted. But also, we want to constantly this year go back and revisit the people that have been with us, the rosters we have. What else can we offer them that we can have that? Let's go deeper versus wider. Because some people signed up with us just for Google Ads initially, or just a paid management service. But you know what? We found all these organic opportunities within their site or their social media or things like that. Let's go back and help them. They already have a great relationship with us. They already trust us. Like, why not service them better? So a big initiative this year is to try to go back, revisit our entire roster, and find not just upsells, but more value for everyone. And so far, it's been awesome. People have been like, "Hey, I didn't even know you did that." There's been a few of those conversations that it's led to more revenue. It's led to even higher levels of trust, and then we have this kind of internal connectivity of departments that we're sharing a lot of information with one another to have great results. So it's interesting, but it's definitely something we're trying to have that little more deeper versus wider mentality.
Why was saying yes so painful? Like, what's an example?
Um, because when the early stages of saying yes was more of that, like, I got to go figure out how to service this. It wasn't truly vetting it appropriately, and it was those one-offs all the time in that was like really not smart. So someone would come to us and they're like, we need help with social media, we need help with some paid, but we also do SMS texting, and we also do this email thing over here, or we have this other third-party thing. And it was like not really in our wheelhouse, but early on we'd be like, yeah, we can do that. And then like we do the things that we stayed in our lane, but then it was these one-off things we said yes to kind of get the business that created more problems because we didn't truly specialize in that thing. So there was a few of those that it can get you in trouble. So I think you got to learn what you're really good at. You got to find the things that lead to return with your partners, and have that moment of honesty with everyone that like, oh, do you do this thing? It's like, sure, you can go learn it and do it, but people hired you as the expert on certain things. You gotta be super honest and transparent in that of what you can absolutely deliver on. So I think you can get yourself in a ton of trouble if you just say yes to everything.
Is there a super painful example you can think of?
Yeah, there's probably a few, um, because that was like what kind of started a lot of the early days things. But yeah, I think there was definitely a very large painting company earlier on, super early on, So I don't want to make it seem like we do any of this stuff. No, we don't. But in some of that stuff, they did come to us for some email marketing or something specific. It was actually a third party tool that we've never used before. And they're like, you got experience with that? They're like, well, we know it. We've heard of it. We could definitely kind of weigh in on that. But there was like even tools that if you're not super familiar with, you can't just magically learn them overnight. And a lot of things, they have similar features and functionality and such. But like someone that like knows Klaviyo inside and out is very different than someone knows like Constant Contact, MailChimp, or these other tools inside and out. And if something's like e-commerce driven versus like service-based, companies, it's very different how you use them, how you communicate, things like that. So there's been a few of those early on that we have some e-commerce clients that we have all the confidence in the world and we know exactly what we're doing with. But like early on, we said yes to some things that we probably shouldn't have said yes to that were e-commerce and really relying on just SMS and some stuff like that we didn't have a ton of experience with. So, there was like some sort of like hair gel company or some other thing that was just, there was another clothing company super early on that they wanted us for like UGC stuff on social that we really didn't do a ton of at the time, but now we like actually represent creators and influencers. So there's things that like we grew into and learned, but like the early days of saying yes to it caused way more problems. And then if the client's dissatisfied, they'll leave. They're going to leave no matter what. So just be honest up front and take on what you can actually fulfill. Because if you can't, it's just wasting everyone's time, including your own.
Do you think that early on, saying yes to things you knew nothing about actually created some business lines you wouldn't have otherwise today?
Definitely early on. Like freelancer stuff out of school, 100%, because like you have to have, it's the same thing when it comes to like I mentioned hiring, is like you have to have some proof. That's like the biggest thing is like someone's going to be like, well, show me what you've done. And you're just trying to create a portfolio. So even so, the early on stuff of saying yes to, you'd either do it for free or you do it at the most affordable rate. So you'd kind of have transparency there of like, I'm going to give you a deal because like we don't have a ton of experience in this, or someone that just wants to learn from it. So there's a little bit of give and take in that, but you have to do things a certain number of times to kind of have confidence knowing something's going to work. So if you're early on freelancer, individual, solo kind of entrepreneur, you're probably going to fall into that trap a bunch. You'll definitely learn from it, but unfortunately, you'll probably burn some bridges in that learning process. So I don't recommend that. If you really want to scale the appropriate way, just you got to find the right people and not necessarily try to like do the trial and error thing.
Yeah, I mean, today you're in such a different stage of business than you were back then, for sure.
90%.
What's your biggest focus now? I heard you say, like, is it finding the right people? Is it solutions? Like, what's the focus of Torro right now?
The focus now is just finding more A player talent, people that can step into a role, kick ass, and do well. And it's something that we have a phenomenal roster of partners and clients now that we want to do some of that additional service offerings and offer more of that video, YouTube, organic strategy into things that we're doing actively with them. That we want to find people that can create incredible content and people that are willing to take risks. I'd rather hire someone that can do that versus play it safe. And what works, a year ago, what works today with certain algorithms, very, very different. So you have to some extent, have this exploratory, experimental mindset. So yeah, we're looking for specialists, people that do great, but they also have a little bit of that trial and error in them.
Yeah. Um, and so I always hear you got to find an A player, but everyone defines it differently. So what does an A player mean for you?
Um, an A player is someone that can come in and actually educate us. So that's probably the biggest factor because like we don't act like we know everything. There's just too much. Things are changing so fast. We do really believe in like self-educating here, finding educational pieces. When you learn something new, we share it with the team here. We have an entire internal library, an educational library of things that we'll do, share internally, go back and reference. But we're looking for people that can step in and continue our education here. Because if
Yeah.
someone can do that, they are absolutely an A player.
Interesting. Does that definition, so back to the Hormozy barbell, does that definition change? If you guys, I don't know if you guys use that barbell idea too, does that definition change at different parts of the barbell?
Sure. Yeah. You know, but I think it can be applied very in a linear fashion across a business, that whether it is from operationals to execution to anything, that someone that has experience, someone that has, learned certain things with certain tools and new things, that they can step in and show us a better way. That was something that, if I do reference back to, say, Michelle, right? She stepped in and she was looking for more of that kind of approval from the start, of like, well, how do you want this done? And I was like, no. I want you to show me. Like, you were hired because of your intelligence, your passion for creating systems. I want you to see this big picture and come in and be able to remedy the situation and really apply your expertise to this. So that's an A player right there. And that's someone that can come in, see things from an outside perspective, and then help shape, who we're turning into.
Yeah. And so what about the case of like, say, and I'm gonna mess it up, but the macaroni reviewer, right? I imagine this person's right. Okay. I imagine this person's like super experimental, super interested, though new. And so does
Yes.
the definition of A player change for a person like that? Or is this just you're at a different stage of business where you're looking for more leadership type roles and you need the A players on the other side of the barbell?
I think that's really good to call that out, because there's certainly the A players that have had 10 plus years of experience in a certain industry. But to me, there's also a ton of A players that have a different mindset and different level of experience, that are straight coming
Yeah.
out of school, that actually have zero business world experience. And that example, her name's Chloe, incredible, super talented, tapped into, all the latest trends, all the new like things you can do and features within social media and TikTok and all that stuff, that we were working with, Cisco Brewers. We were working with them on Nantucket, and we took a ferry out there one day to do a full day shoot of all this new content, and she brought so many examples and trends and different things to the table that day to film and shoot, that was so intentional, and she was so new at the time. But it was something like, she was an A player because she kind of grew up with social media. She kind of so tapped into some of these things that we do, that she could see it from a different, that she didn't have to be in the business world for a certain number of years. She kind of just had this stuff built into, that youthful experience that was very different, but she was an A player from day one.
Interesting. So you surprised me because I would have thought that the definition of an A player for a leader would be different
Mhm.
definition of an A player for a lack of better terms doer.
Mhm.
But it sounds like in both cases, you want people who will educate you and teach you on something and just teach you on different things.
It's true. I think that it does go back to that. Like, what we're looking for is
Yeah.
someone that has a unique experience, unique perspective on something, that can teach us something new and show us a different way, because things change. And you can go back to kind of the hits, right? If you're a musician, you can kind of like play through the hits on your first album or whatever. But we're looking for that kind of experimental, different point of view, to not just play the hits, because they don't work the same anymore. You can't just go back and play the old
Yeah.
reliable.
So different.
So yeah, I think it's very, very different. So yes, you're going to find an A player very different from a leadership role, an operational role, to someone that can be a little more experimental with execution, that may have a different kind of youthful view of something, especially when it comes to like social media.
How do you hire different for the executionists, the doer, etc., versus the leaders in that case?
Um, so the execution side of it is more of that, show me your portfolio. I want to see the things that you've done and what worked, what didn't. And that was some of the stuff that, early on, if someone could just run up to me and show me their phone, like, hey, I got to show you this. This is a really cool, I did this. What do you think? That's more of that execution side, that I want to see that you have been messing with this stuff. I want to see that you've tinkered and tried different things. And then you show proof that something took off, and you can actually tell me why. it was because of the visual hook, the text hook, the verbal hook. Like there's certain things that I'm like, wow, I didn't really know how important that 3 second hook was until you pointed it out. And then it had massive liftoff on all this content. So that's very different. But to the operational person, I could show them how we do something. And this could be from day one. Like I could show this even in an interview of like, here's how we do something. This is kind of where the flow of our business goes. When we onboard something, it has this sort of automation. What would you change to kind of get them to real time analyze inefficiencies or opportunities or things that have maybe too much manual touch to them? That if you find repetitive things, there's a way to automate that. And that may be one of the biggest things that we saw early on, that Michelle pointed out from an operational standpoint. Again, she's our COO. She can like find these little blind spots. But it's like, wow, we've done that manual thing way too long. There's definitely an automated way to do that. But I think when you're kind of vetting people, certain people have an eye for that. And it could be different signals, of how do you organize your closet at home to how can you look at these processes and change it. But those are things that some people just have different colors.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of those exercises internally with understanding, how people here tick, how they communicate. And there was a lot of those exercises we did here that was like eye-opening to understand like why people are the way that they are.
God, don't look at my closet at home.
I know.
Okay, so that's actually kind of a cool test. Does the test or process differ? So we talked about differences between leadership and executionists. What about in-house hires versus, say, contractors or freelancers? Do you have different tests for how you how you do that with folks?
Yeah, that's something that I've tried it all as far as, outsourced efforts, ways to kind of maybe save a dollar. And even now, we kind of have like a hybrid model. So, like early on, right? I didn't want to necessarily bring things in house and kind of give benefits and 401k and all this stuff. It was very intimidating for me to kind of like make that step. So I looked at everything under the sun as far as an outsourced effort and ran into just so many challenges of different work being done during the day that it's, you know, I'd basically send a task off in this queue, and then it's like while I'm sleeping, this work's being done halfway around the world, and then I wake up, and then my queue it like pops up that this work was done, and it was like these, outsourced elves would do the work at night kind of scenario. It was like we've tried everything, but the communication just it wasn't tight enough. If you have a problem, which was where this we found like this is just not a good model, was like I have a problem right now, and this person it's like 4 a.m. their time, halfway around the world. It's like we can't run a business that way. We can't operate to that. And we tried different positions. We tried different things from an outsourced manner, and it just it was a bad model. It was a bad model, and some of the trust that we've built in the local reputation, people want to come in. People miss that, like COVID and all
Yeah.
that, of living on Zoom calls. Like people missed the shaking hands and coming into the office. And I was like, man, why don't you guys come in? We'll talk about this in person. How do you like your
That's cool.
coffee? We'll get set up here and kind of make sure that we can kind of like actually have a conversation here and you can meet the team. I'd rather you come in and meet the team than just send me your, what you're looking to have done. And then we punt it again halfway around the world and it comes back. It's just, it doesn't have that relationship that I wanted and that was important to me when it came to kind of building a reputation. So yeah, we kind of stopped that immediately. Although I get people starting out looking for the most affordable option, you'll learn that it's not the same as having people around you. And that's one thing, like we now have a really phenomenal culture and tons of jokes throughout the day. You find something, you have these wins. It's like you share it with the team immediately here. It's fun. It's exciting to come to work than versus just having this digital relationship with someone that's not there
Yeah, and you literally have clients come in office.
all the time. And it's great. They come through the door. We have this really impressive office that's, we do shoots here. We do a lot of video content creation here, that it's a really creative space that, come in, let's film some stuff, let's create content together, get creative together. And it's fun. It's fun to do it that way than, again, live on a Zoom call and do it the way that some people now prefer it that way. And I get it, but it's just not the same as the human touch.
Totally. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. And so, last question, we'll wrap up. Um, so you're focused on deeper versus wider. That's the next 12 months, right? So we'll call it client success. Is that the main focus for, that's the main focus for the next 12 months, you said?
Yeah, yeah. Looking back at our existing relationships and how can
Yeah.
we kind of strengthen those versus continuously just add on, and add on.
What have you tried? So let's call it deeper versus wider client success. What have you tried for client success in the past that maybe didn't work? And like, what are you guys doing now?
In that kind of like strengthen a specific relationship
Yeah, like
with someone
going
that didn't
deeper
work.
into a relationship. Yeah, I'm assuming so. For example, maybe you tried adding on a bunch of service lines and complicated things and it didn't work. Or like how are you guys deepening relationships versus widening?
So the thing that maybe didn't work necessarily is maybe we didn't take into account the internal personnel that were like, hey, we can also do this thing. But then there was someone internally that was their thing, that you can kind of step on people's toes or potentially insult someone if you do that. So that's happened. It's not necessarily a problem. And we look at it as like just a consultative advice. If anything, that like, hey, we noticed, like, I saw your meta ad, right? I saw this thing on Instagram. I screenshotted it. I would do it this way, this, and change up XYZ. And we also do this business. Like, this is something that we could kind of help with that. So it is something that you could maybe kind of ruffle some feathers by going back and stepping on the internal marketing team's toes or someone that it was their job. But most of the time, people are going to take constructive feedback versus be insulted by you're trying to steal their job.
Got it, got it. Um, and so is that how you're focusing on deepening now? Is just expanding the offering for them?
Yeah, I think we have a couple different people now. Like one, it's this, they have these phenomenal showrooms in around New England that large brand. It's someone that they have a phenomenal internal team, great marketing people, super talented videographer, but we're not seeing the best efficiencies with the internal team. So it's something that we're trying to strengthen. Like, hey, if we're doing, SEO for you, let's make sure we're all kind of marching to the same drum beat here and being efficient in all of your talents. So there's some new things that we're doing that are like strengthening like the consultative side of marketing and inefficiencies that, hey, we'd actually like to run some communication across the board here to make sure that, your video efforts and your creative is all going with the same stuff that we're doing here internally. So there's a few things like that we're just trying to tighten overall communications with some internal teams, and it's working. It's really cool. And some people are like, wow, that was really good perspective. Like, they really
That's
appreciate
awesome.
that. And then they produce something, or they take the thing that we offered and they ran with it, and then it had great results organically. So I think as long as people are like open to self-improvement and getting better and stuff, it tends to always play out really well. It's the people that are easily offended that it's not always great. But no, we have some really good stuff happening here that I'm really, really proud of. And yeah, it's pretty cool to see. It's very different than what I thought, because I didn't have plans to grow an agency again. But here we are, and we're applying for the Inc. 5000 and all this other stuff. That it's been cool. It's been cool to zoom out and kind of see the journey.
The accidental agency.
Exactly, right? I guess one thing there is early on when I was kind of like really stressing out of like what I wanted to do, whether it's keep working with this existing relationship that I had of separate agency, or kind of betting on myself to create something different, going out on my own, or maybe starting my own agency. You have this kind of is the grass greener moment when you're kind of weighing options. And I'll just say to anyone that's kind of an entrepreneur and kind of considering, is that the grass is greener on the side that you water. And it is something that I really wanted to put my efforts into the thing that I could fully control, and really water that side. Because I thought, I had a lot of contemplation of like what I wanted at the time, but I always knew like the side that I put that effort into would be the side that worked out. So when we were kind of experimenting, right, with social media and trying to develop new strategies, we noticed this very specific trend that we kind of took full ownership of and then created almost a new brand around. So you'll find these like what we deemed called transitional hooks on social, where it starts with some sort of like crazy scenario, someone say doing like a backflip and they totally fail and they land sideways, where people were clipping right at that moment and then putting themselves in that position where, like, for the first 3 seconds you see this person flipping through the air and then they land sideways, but then it immediately switches to, like, someone laying on the floor and then standing up and telling them whatever service they offer. So these like little transitional hooks where, like, these things go viral like really, really quickly. So what we did was we created a website called transitionalhooks.com, and it was something where we started splicing different transitional hooks for people to use, that were like, hey, if you have problems with your social, go to this website, download a transitional hook, use it, right? Use that initial 3 seconds and then transition it into some content about yourself. Your viewership will absolutely go up. And as you download those, right, they're free assets, sign up for the newsletter. And that newsletter grew to about 40,000 emails. The website was getting millions of views per month. And we noticed that all these different like creators and influencers in tech were promoting the website on social. And they were like, I just found this crazy new website. You got to check it out. It's called transitionalhooks.com. And like so many people were talking about it. And there was this kind of copycat thing happening with creators where someone mentions it and then someone else goes and mentions it. So we had this kind of virality moment of this website getting a boatload of traffic, tons of new people joining a newsletter, and then all these digital creators kind of pumping it and growing it exponentially. So that's still something we own. We don't necessarily like put a ton of effort into it anymore because it was like a huge, huge trend. It still works. You could totally use it. It'll get you more views immediately. But it was something really cool we did last year that had a massive kind of impact. That was pretty sweet.
That's awesome. So people can still go to Transitional Hooks, download it, and get free transitional hooks.
Yeah. Yeah, you can still go. You can still sign up for that.
That's awesome.
If we upload new hooks, we'll still send out an email showing people there's new hooks. But it was something that trajectory was so funny with the analytics to see, like,
Cool.
hey, we just came up with this thing and we were just using it ourselves, and then all of a sudden there's millions and millions of people using it, and it kind of had this
Awesome.
crazy viral moment that was it was pretty sweet. So when people
That's
were like,
awesome.
hey, what should we do with our content? We're like, go try a transitional hook. And a lot of our clients actually gave it a go, and then they had this huge boost. And we did that with a bunch of clients, and it was their like most viewed piece of content is when they did that.
I'll probably steal a transitional hook for this podcast.
I think you should go try it out. Yeah, make it. It's funny, it's entertaining, and that's the stuff that people want. Is they want value mixed with entertainment. So, yeah, definitely give it a try.
So say I want to show up on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
If there were 3 simple things you would do differently that have the biggest impact to show up on ChatGPT, what would they be?
So the first thing is I would look at like overall kind of site structure. And the fastest way to do that is to first just look at your sitemap. So this is what you give Google if you do it the right way. But the first thing you should do is kind of like look at your sitemap, how many pages you have, what are those pages. There doesn't seem to be a lot of substance to this, but if you go take your sitemap and then feed it into Google Search Console, that's connecting the dots of new content to your website and feeding Google what it should be indexing. So like step 1, just make sure you have the appropriate pages of things that you do and you want to be found for, and then make sure that they're connected to Google Search Console. That's like kind of step 1, step 2. The other thing, all right, let me show you this because this is kind of bananas. But what do you want to be found for on ChatGPT? Like if someone prompts what, like they're going to recommend you.
So I would love to be found for if people are looking to hire a account manager or a project manager or customer support folks, some of those.
Sure. So I'm looking to hire a project manager, and I don't know if I should outsource or not, something like that.
Yeah, or like hire a project manager in Latin America or overseas or offshore.
Or a project manager offshore. Who should I use? And yeah, what do you recommend? So something like that, whatever it is, whatever that kind of long tail prompt is. Right now, it's searching the internet. It's coming up with a bunch of things that it just did basically its own Google search. And what I'll do is I'll reverse engineer what ChatGPT just did and what they searched.
Hmm.
So I go up to the address bar, I copy that unique identifier at the top after the C dash. Okay. I will inspect the elements of the page. I'm going to go to network. I'm going to paste in that ID at the top and refresh the page. Okay. Now that ID with the type of document called fetch, I'm going to click on that. Whoops. Hold up. Click on that. And then inside of that fetch type, I'm going to search for queries. And hold on, I should definitely minimize this because it's a mess. Find queries. And I can see what ChatGPT just searched to find those recommendations. So ChatGPT
No
just went out on the
way.
internet and searched these two things. They searched hire offshore project manager service, remote project manager hiring platforms, Philippines, India, Ukraine, etc. And then it searched after that best offshore project manager hiring recommendations, platforms for remote project manager contractors. So if I were you, what I would do is after reverse engineering this, I would go create content around that. So if we go back to, what are the assets that you should be putting on your website? What are the videos and content that you should be creating on for short form content? It's around those things that ChatGPT is searching.
So you just hack ChatGPT to figure out. ChatGPT goes into Google, types in a bunch of stuff. You figured out how to reverse engineer what ChatGPT looks like to show up on the search.
Correct.
That's insane.
So that's the tough type of stuff that people hire us for. Those are the things that, if we see those different opportunities, um, in that AI visibility score and the different things that a brand wants to be found for, it's like you can reverse engineer those things and have a better chance. And it's really just a game of compounding, doing it over and over again. So Google, ChatGPT, these different things, they care about two things. Let me stop my sharing. They care about publish dates and they care about modification dates. So if you're publishing new content, that's great, but you can't just leave it. You have to go back and modify it. So otherwise, it has decay and it tapers off. And there's a reason. If you search anything right now, you're going to find Reddit at the top, you're going to find Wikipedia at the top. And it's because that is constantly touched and modified all the time with updates. That
Mhm.
if you do that with your own content, those signals are sent to Google and these different LLMs that you're on top of your stuff, that you're constantly modifying, you're educating, you're helping. And those are the types of things that go to the top.
That's insane. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, this has been great, Matt. Where can people find you?
So I mentioned experimental stuff throughout this
Okay.
entire time that we've been
Yeah.
chatting. If you look at our social media, it is very experimental to the point where you're going to find some stuff in there that you probably cringe at, but we're constantly testing with our own platforms. So our website is torro.io with two R's, TORRO.io. That's actually our Instagram handle as well. Very intentional, so people know our domain and URL from our username and handle. But we have that same handle across all channels, TORRO, Torro Media. And if you find us on any platform, you're going to see a lot of experimental short form content. We jump onto any trend fairly quickly, and there's a lot of educational pieces too. So, if anything, If you give us a follow, I promise you're going to learn from the new feature, the new AI tool, a new website that we come across. We're a total open book, so we'll share it with the world. And if you follow along, I know you'll learn something.
Amazing. Amazing. Thanks for coming on, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.